Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Anime Night in the Dojo. Today's featured show, Spy Family, Season 3.
Yep, Spy Family, Season 3, Episode 13, final episode of the season. Welcome back to the dojo. I'm Ryu. That's Age. We're back for more Anime Night in the dojo, and, well, spy stuff happened. Fiona really punched the crap out of that guy last week. We got to talk about hysterical strength. Because Discord is stupid, now I don't have my visual cues for our mics being active, because as you guys can see, the border is around us constantly. You can kind of probably see that a little bit in our overlay. But I use it as like a visual cue when I can't see my equalizer. And yeah, it's going to be kind of aggravating. But luckily, this is the only thing we're recording today, so maybe it'll randomly fix itself in the next day or so. But yeah, it is what it is. But as for Spy Family, wrapping it up today. Talk about the season on a whole when we get done with this episode, but we'll have to see what the fallout is after the sewer situation and all the stuff that was going on last week, and everything we've talked about all season. So we'll just have to see where it goes, but it's been a pretty decent season so far. It's pretty much had something for everybody. Each character had some sort of progress. The only thing we really didn't get was more on Garden, but I assume that's going to come in like we're going to get walloped over the head by Garden lore at some point. You know what I mean? So
yeah, Garden is probably a longer term thing. Like I said, like Garden is like the only thing that's really set up as potentially being a past Desmond kind of plot thread.
Yep.
Like we could still, very well get Garden stuff prior to Desmond. It's just like as it stands right now, it's the only real candidate for something that could friggin' last beyond Desmond.
Yep. So anyway, we're going to push some buttons and get going here. So people on Patreon, we'll see you on the other side of the edit for the timer reaction, and people on YouTube, we'll see you on the other side for the discussion and review. And if you're looking for the opposite of whatever you're watching, it's on Patreon or YouTube, and the links are where they need to be. So yeah, so we're going to push some buttons and get going. So there goes some. Well, alrighty then, there you guys have it. That is it for Spy Family Season 3. Pretty solid season across the board. Just wide generalization right now while we talk about it for a little bit, because honestly there's not a huge amount to say about this episode as it was. It was kind of just wrapping it up, and they just didn't have enough time to put this into the previous episode, that kind of thing. So that's how this episode kind of felt. Like it wasn't like we needed 13 episodes to get everything, and then this was just like we kind of need like an extended wrap-up episode with just a bunch of like random stuff. That's why we had like the Fever Anya dream sequence at the end there and that kind of thing, which is totally fine. If you don't have enough time to do it, it's better to just have an episode like this that wraps it up and then has some nonsense. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with that. It's better to have an extra than to cram something in and cut stuff. You know what I mean? And there were still some vaguely important things in this that we'll get to. And they were able to do stuff like this. Like we talked about this last week, the limiters on the human body, that kind of thing. And, this is exactly what we talked about last week. So there's not really anything to rehash it, but the narrator explains it in the situation, and it's good for, just explanation, that kind of thing. And I will say that it is pretty hilarious that this sequence right here got lyricked background music. I mentioned during the live reaction, I was like, the only way you step up, it's normal background music, then the like epic sequence background music. I think we all know what that kind of music is, you know what I mean? Then when you step it up, you add lyrics to it, and then the final form of that is when the lyrics switch to Latin. So didn't get that far, but still.
we got Ace Combat. I don't remember which one. I think it was Ace Combat, but it was one of the freaking major like flight sim games. Like one of the big memes to it is the fight's not serious till the sky sings Latin.
Right. So yeah, I think it's kind of interesting that they went with like a lyric background music for this sequence right here, but Fiona was in super serious mode, and Wheeler, well, again, in this whole sequence, we mentioned it like right here. It's just like well, her arm's dislocated. What could she possibly do with that? It's like, it still exists as a physical object. So if she hits you with it, it's still going to be there. You know what I mean?
You know what else doesn't have joints? A whip.
Yeah. And we all know what whips are capable of doing. Just saying. So,
yeah,
doesn't matter if your shoulder is dislocated and your arm shattered or whatever. It's the mass is still there, and if you get hit by it, it's still gonna friggin' hurt, obviously. So, yeah. Just to make that a case in point. But I will say that it is pretty hilarious that they got the this gag in, but it's not the gag. She just can't stand up.
Yeah, she only has the one functioning leg. The rest of her limbs are all freaking dislocated and or broken in multiple places.
So that's what would happen to you if you tried to take a step. So, as hilarious as it is for this gag, I think we all know this gag. This is not a gag. She's so broken at the moment that that's just what naturally would happen to her.
Yeah, it's just the moment the adrenaline wears off, it's just immediately like, oh wait, I should not be standing right now.
Yeah. So that's actually a pretty clever use of double meaning gag. Gotta appreciate it. So it's one of those things you gotta look at it and go, yes, not a gag, but kind of a gag at the same time. So
as far as the fight is concerned, though, yeah, like Wheeler identifies it pretty much immediately as like he is stronger and more experienced than her, and so he should be able to win as far as he's concerned. But like Fiona mentions in her whole speech during the freaking music, Wheeler is too afraid to risk his own life, whereas she's literally putting everything she has into the fight. He's just trying to basically think his way out of it and try not to actually get himself injured or captured.
Right. And, well, all your advantages kind of go out the window at that point. That simple. If you're not willing to die in that situation and the other person is, you're probably going to lose unless there is a unbelievable power gap between you. You know what I mean? If like a regular human tried to get into a punch contest with like Frieza or something, Frieza's still gonna kill you. Doesn't matter if you're willing to die and use hysterical strength. But when we're talking pretty average, like not like average human, but like well-trained humans, you know, they're within the same ballpark. So if she's willing to risk her life, that's the difference. So
yeah, she the big difference, is just really just the fact that she was willing to do anything to win the fight, whereas he was, like I said, just concerned with trying to keep himself from getting captured.
Right. So either way, this whole sequence did have its comedic moments, because once again, in all the other realizations that Fiona came to, Lloyd heard all of this, because, you know, there's no way he just woke up conveniently, like, right as she was about to kill him. So, you know, little do we know that Lloyd was composing that background track for everybody to hear. That's what he was doing this time.
He was just pulling an engine and playing dead.
Yeah, right. So, either way, the sequence was really good for what it was. And, again, you know, this is never not going to be a thing until this is Frankie's problem. Obviously, she's never going to feel this way about Frankie, but it's still going to be Frankie's problem at some point. That's my massive prediction for this, is Frankie and Fiona. We talked about that earlier this season, where they had their, like, you know, mission together and that kind of thing. So it'll be interesting to see if they push that narrative, because it's there. You know what I mean? So we'll just have to see if the author goes in that direction. But the seeds have been planted for that being a thing. So it'll be interesting to see if that's a relationship that happens going forward, because it just kind of makes sense in a way. So
the call died for a bit there. Last I heard, I was going to make a freaking joking comment about after I made the freaking engine comment, I was going to make a joking comment about Fiona being lucky that Lloyd didn't try to steal her shoes.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it died, so I missed like everything you said after I made the engine comment.
Well, yeah, I was just going into the Frankie and Fiona stuff, so
I still feel like that's going to be like the long term. It's actually he's going to end up being Frankie and Fiona getting together.
Yeah. Because that just kind of you can kind of tell based on like when characters are first introduced to each other. You know what I mean? When you've seen enough stuff at a certain point, most authors have the same tell. You know what I mean? It's storytelling. And could it absolutely not happen? Of course. But it has like the telltale signs of like first meeting and, you know, secondary characters, that kind of thing. It's like, yeah, that's probably reasonable to assume that could be a thing based on just the situation that they went through. You know what I mean?
It's not even necessarily just like a telltale sign kind of thing or anything like that, so much as it is just it's just the kind of thing where like it'd be good, it works. Like it'd be kind of a missed opportunity not to do it. Not to say that they couldn't do it, that they have to do it. They could totally do something else. But as it stands right now, that would be probably like the best way to resolve the whole situation with both characters.
Right.
They both get strung along by Lloyd the whole time. Fiona is constantly looking down on everyone who isn't Lloyd, and Frankie's whole gimmick is him trying to find the damsel in distress, which Fiona is the exact opposite of.
Right.
So the joke is that you would end up with her.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things that just makes sense across the board. And during this whole sequence right here, besides some of the missed subtitle opportunities for whatever was going on there, but it's pretty obvious like what Fiona was thinking right there and whatnot. She's still been out of shape. That Twilight hurt everything, but it's the important part of this sequence was like with the older guy here mentioning it's like, oh, what are you gonna do about the missus? And he even Fiona mentions like he doesn't refer to her as your Briar anymore. You know what I mean? So that connection that we talked about, and something to reiterate now, is like a lot of people like have talked about like the story is like moving too slowly or whatever, and we talked about it a little bit in the last couple episodes where it's just like if Lloyd doesn't have that connection to Anya and Yor to the point where he actually wants to be a husband and father legit, then if he gets to Desmond, it's over. He would just walk away and their series would be over. You know what I mean? It's something that you could do, I suppose, as an author, but imagine building up Yor and Anya and all that stuff and then just being like, now we're just following Lloyd and we're not gonna follow Anya or Yor because Lloyd has left to do some other mission in another country. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like it's not impossible to do or pull off, but it is usually very polarizing and hard to pull off. That said, though, if they were to try to move away from the family dynamic, they would most likely still follow at least Anya, if not Yor as well. But you do see stories shift sometimes away from like the initial premise where like they set up something as one thing, but before going into another, like
right.
Forgetting a prime example of that in recent years, once again, it's Kaguya-sama. Starts off as just the typical will they, won't they rom-com and turns into an actual like proper romance.
Right. So it's not impossible, but it's one of those things for how this story has been set up. I don't think it would work. And even if the story is quote unquote slogging, according to some people, it's what has to be done for Lloyd to make these connections. And us getting his backstory in this season just shows how hard it would be for somebody like him to make those connections because of all the loss that he has suffered. The more people, the more a person has lost emotionally and like with family or what have you, family, friends, all that kind of stuff, the harder it generally is for them to form bonds with new people because they're afraid to lose them again. And that is what Lloyd is trying to do by preventing this potential next war, because he doesn't want that to happen again. He doesn't want what happened to him happen to some other kid. You know what I mean? And
yeah, once again, like we got that whole thing of like that is Lloyd's primary motivation is just that he doesn't want more freaking tragic orphan cases of kids being just screwed over by adults' wars.
Yep. So that's why they kind of have to kind of like slow boat it and do these things with like, you know, you're just having these like issues of like, you know, wanting to have gripes and stuff like that. And, you know, while it's not the atypical situation, obviously, because Lloyd is obviously as close to the perfect guy that you can get because he has to play that part. You know what I mean? So you're not going to have a lot of gripes. And we talked about that in that whole episode where we were talking about like girl talk and all that stuff. You know, it is possible to be a pretty decent human being most of the time. You know what I mean? And if you're just a reasonable person and you're doing what you have to, and you know, you're taking care of everything around the house and bringing in income and stuff like that, I mean, what else do you need? You know what I mean? You could gripe about the small things, but if that leads to like divorce and all that stuff that we talked about before, and I'm not going into that again, that's insane. If you have a partner that's like Lloyd, you honestly should have nothing to complain about. You know what I mean? And it's definitely possible. It is absolutely possible to be in a relationship with very few to minimal gripes. And it's possible to have like none. It's like, yeah, maybe the life's not perfect and we don't get to do everything we want or have everything we want or whatever, but it's just like, it could be so much worse. You know what I mean? So
yeah, no, like there's plenty of times where like people have gripes in a relationship, but it's not really about the other person in the relationship. It's just about their freaking like living situation or some other external sources. It's not necessarily about their partner.
Right. And without getting too into just like current cultural madness, I think that's getting worse, especially with like the generation that's like right behind us that are like in their early 20s. They're I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of, and it's not just women, it's guys too. But you see a lot of the, you know, oh, if this person isn't a 6'6", you know, 6 feet, 6 pack, 6 figures, that kind of situation. You know what I mean? It's on both sides, you know, man or woman, doesn't matter. But you see that like, and I think it was Pokimane that recently did like the like bog, like bare minimum, like who she would date kind of thing. And it was just like, you realize that you're looking at like a tiny fraction of the population, right? Like we're talking about like less than 1,000 people. I hope your bare minimum standards is less than 1,000 people out of like 7 billion. You're out of your mind. You know what I mean?
I don't remember the name of it, but yeah, there was some freaking like dating freaking it wasn't just like necessarily a quiz thing. It was more like it wasn't a quiz. It was one of those more like things of like you fill out the form and it tells you like what your thing is, where it's like hit from $0 to infinite dollars. How much money should the person be earning before you date them, and like just so on and so forth. But it was a thing that was just kind of going around, and Pokimane did it, and like when she initially did it, it was like her initial thing was like 0.24% of people,
right,
for her minimum first date requirements,
right. Which again,
and
good luck finding that person in your vicinity that isn't taken. You know what I mean?
Yeah, what she immediately caught as like, oh wait, that's ridiculously low, and freaking laxed up several of her things to try to save face, and got it up to a whole 1.3%.
Yeah, which is still very low. You know what I mean? It's kind of one of those things where you look at like big time just anybody, any influencer, you know what I mean? And even like I always use like Markiplier as an example because he's one of the big time YouTubers, that kind of thing. A lot of people probably know who he is. He's got like, you know, 30, almost 40 million subscribers on YouTube, right? And let's just assume
Ever since PewDiePie kind of fell off the board and stopped doing gaming stuff and just in general kind of just stopped being a major face of YouTube, Mark has kind of just became the YouTube gamer guy.
Right. And he's got his movie coming out here in the next couple of days as we record. But it's one of those things where you see a lot of influencers that, like, he has almost 40 million subscribers. Now, let's just assume there's probably there's not a lot, but there's probably some bots in there, repeat accounts, that kind of thing, accounts that have elapsed, whatever. People who haven't unsubscribed, whatever. But let's just give people the benefit of the doubt, and let's just assume for this, and I know it's not true, but let's just assume we could just cut that number and just say there's probably at bare minimum at least 30 million real people, okay? So that's 30 million people in the world who know who Markiplier is and watch him on a regular basis. You could walk outside and not walk into one of those 30 million people. Okay? He could walk in his hometown, you know what I mean? Or just in any city, and there's people that, 90% of the people, probably even 99% of the people in that area would not recognize him. Because 30 million out of 7 point something billion is not a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, even just here in the US population, that's still only about 10%.
Yeah, that 1 in 10 people would recognize him. You know what I mean? And it was one of those things where he got nominated for like an Emmy or something. I forgot what award it was. Doesn't matter. But he went to the event, whatever it was, and none of the reporters talked to him because they didn't know who he was. Okay?
Yeah, it was his first time being like invited to a red carpet event. I believe it was for like his In Space with Markiplier. Yeah. Something got or he earned him an award of some sort. And he got invited to a red carpet event, and yeah, literally none of the other celebrities or anything knew who he was. None of the reporters knew who he was. He was just basically didn't exist, despite being one of the biggest faces of YouTube and stuff like that.
Right. Now, my whole point of all of that right now, circling back around to the Spy Family stuff as well, just sectionally, is I see a lot of people like with the Pokemon stuff and all that kind of thing is like they're influencers who you go, oh man, they have several 100,000 followers or subscribers or whatever, right? And a lot of these people like that are kind of like Pokemon, and they're kind of like in that, sphere of whatever. A lot of them think that everybody knows who they are, and they only have a couple 100,000. You know what I mean? It's just like you have less than 1 million and you think everybody should know who you are. Like they walk down the street, or they make their typical IRL content or whatever. I'm sure you guys have seen the stuff like people in a gym and acting like, oh, I'm an influencer, how do you not know I'm a major gym influencer, how do you not know who I am, I'm allowed to record in here, that kind of thing. It's like, let me check. Okay, you got 40,000 subscribers. That's, yes, 40,000 people is a lot of people. But when you're comparing it to geographic regions and stuff like that, 1 in 10,000 people in your region probably actually knows who you are. You know what I mean? Just because you have a very large number of followers on social media or whatever, until you break hundreds of millions, you're not going to be recognized everywhere, and nobody's going to know who you are. You know what I mean? The average random person isn't going to recognize you or know who you are. You know what I mean? You're not you're not a big deal. You're not somebody that, somebody would recognize I'm sure everybody know, the majority of people who watch the news know who David Muir is, the ABC anchor, that kind of thing. Like actual real household names. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like Gavin has stated multiple times that basically it's very rare for anyone to recognize him whenever he goes outside of frickin' Austin.
Right.
And Gavin is he's even bigger than fricking Mark is, right, as far as YouTube celebrities.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things where a lot of people they see a big number, and yes, if you have tens of thousands of subscribers, that's great. Obviously you can do a lot with that, monetarily, all that kind of thing. But it's when you're talking about everybody knowing you can't assume that everybody knows who you are unless you are Mr. Beast or something, that kind of level of badness. You know what I mean? that's a whole other discussion. I'm not really a fan of that guy, but I'm just saying I think he is now the YouTube king of subscribers, and he has Amazon series, and he's all over the place, that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Mr. Beast has been the top of YouTube for years now at this point.
Yeah. So he would probably be reasonably recognized by a reasonable amount of people. You know what I mean? But you see a lot of these people that act like they're a big deal and should be known by everybody. It's like, well, I have 100,000 people. It's like, are all 100,000 of your subscribers living in your town? You know what I mean? Like, I live in a region where there's well over 2 million people within a 150 mile radius. So 5% of them would know who you are. You know what I mean? And that's only if all those 100,000 people lived in the 50-mile radius of you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where it's a big number, but it's also not. And a lot of people just fail to recognize that and have that self-awareness and just think oh, well, these kind of people aren't good enough for me, that kind of thing. And it's just no, sometimes it's just better to be Lloyd. You know what I mean? Circle all the way back around to Spy Family after 7-8 minutes here. But that was the whole point of that, because there's not really a huge amount we could talk about this episode for what it was, but just some of these things that are tied to these situations like this is you don't have to be a 666 or whatever to be a good person or a good partner. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I mean, Lloyd isn't unattractive or anything. He's supposed to be fairly attractive, and he is got a stable situation and stuff like that, but he doesn't fit the unreasonable standards that a lot of people would have these days, at least not on initial face value. He very much is one of those kind of people that you'd have to actually get into a relationship with him before you'd really see what kind of person he really is,
right? Because
he's so guarded.
And again,
but
everybody's allowed everybody's allowed their subjective preferences. You know what I mean? I don't want to date a blonde. I don't want to date this. I don't want to date that. I don't want to, whatever. That's fine. You don't have to, you can have your preferences at a certain point. But at a certain point as well, all those preferences could pile up to you having 5 people you could date in the entire world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and having preferences also doesn't necessarily mean that you would never date someone who doesn't meet those preferences, for example.
Yep.
Also, contrary to more recent popular belief, saying that you're not attracted to black people does not mean you're racist.
Right.
Or Asians or whatever, name a race that you don't find physically attractive.
It's just you being subjective. It's like saying, I don't like seafood. It's really not that big of a deal. Unless you're actually being a racist, you saying you're not attracted to something is totally fine. It's really not that big of a deal. I could say, I'm not attracted to Taylor Swift. Is she objectively beautiful? Generally speaking, yeah. I don't find her attractive. Does that mean she's not? No. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of this massive ridiculous stigma where it's just you're allowed your preferences, and your preference doesn't mean something is X, Y, or Z. That's something that we have to reiterate in our new intro video is if we say we like something, it's completely different than us saying something is good or bad. We can like something and it can be bad or good, and vice versa. Something could be bad, but we could also like it, or we could also dislike it. Those are two different sides of the coin. You know what I mean? And that's why we always explain ourselves. In the case of Spy Family, for example, I like the show, and I think it's a good show. You know what I mean? I like the Fast and the Furious franchise. Do I think it's a good franchise? Not really. As a movie series, it's just okay. So, you know what I mean? and it's something that a lot of people can't seem to wrap their heads around is when somebody says, I like bacon. They take that as bacon is the greatest food in the world and nothing surpasses it. That's what they hear. It's no, I just like bacon. Is bacon the best food in the world for you to eat? Absolutely not.
To bring it back, bring all the way back to the freaking old George Carlin reference. Saying I like pancakes means fuck waffles.
Right, exactly. It's crazy. So I think people just need to really come off the terminally online, only doing social media, posting just madness and getting on each other about things that don't matter. We talked about it with like the Gotchi Akuta stuff. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, the Gotchi Akuta author is not trans, so she's a transphobe. It's like, you know, have you guys ever seen the does not compute, the old robot adage? You know what I mean? So it's just one of those things where a lot of people really need to understand the differences between subjective and objective assessment and respecting people's subjective opinions on things when it comes to things that they do or do not like, when it literally has nothing to do with them. Somebody else's private life does not affect you. You are affecting you. You know what I mean? You are letting their private life affect you, meaning you are affecting yourself, not them. They aren't the problem. You are.
In general, people have gotten way too sensitive about freaking, especially racism, but also like sexism and all sorts of other isms out there. But like freaking, I think one of the freaking most recent examples that I just was like seeing the other day is Enfield just came out. And one of the NPCs during the main story basically tries to identify the races of the main three characters, Enmin, Perlica, and Chen. They get Perlica's race right, but they misrace Chen and guess at the administrator's race, which even the players don't know the administrator's official race at the moment. Like I've mentioned to you, I've presumed that they're predecessor, but we don't know. But apparently a bunch of people in the community have jumped on the whole, oh, he misraced Chen, he's being a racist.
No.
When
that's no different than if you walked into a room, okay, and there's a Chinese person, a Korean person, and a Japanese person. Okay? And they were just like, identify these people.
Which it actually is fairly similar to that freaking argument, because
you're not being a racist if you get any of it wrong. Do you know what I mean?
Chen's race is Lung, which is which the whole thing with the races in that is that they're like originally like animals and mythological creatures and stuff like that, that a predecessor is like imbued with human DNA and turned into sentient races as a result. But like the Lung were essentially Eastern dragons. The thing he freaking raced her as was Western dragons.
Right. So
The race of Western dragons. I don't remember the official name to it, but yeah, he just freaking misraces her as just a different one of the dragon people.
Right. So he guessed wrong.
It's basically the exact same thing as just seeing a Chinese person and accidentally thinking they're Japanese.
Yeah, it's really not that big of a deal. You were just wrong. You're not saying all Chinese people are terrible people. You know what I mean? Just offhanded blanket remarks. You know what I mean? You're not doing that. You just got it wrong. It's like, oh, I thought you were Chinese. I'm sorry. No big deal. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah. A lot of people these days, it seems like, when it comes to any sort of like racism or anything like that, misconstrue even just registering someone's race at all as being racist, when racism is, by definition, the belief that your race is superior to other races.
Right. Here's an example for you guys. You take a look at me, you'd probably say you're a white guy. I'm not. I'm not going to be mad if you call me a white guy. I look like a white guy. You know what I mean? It's not that big of a deal. I have Spanish and Hungarian descent. All right? Not a white guy. So it's just one of those things where, yes, Eastern European, white, but still, the other half of my family, Spanish. Okay? Look like a white guy. I'm not going to be mad at you. I can't believe you didn't call me Spanish descent. You know what I mean? You look at my last name. Yeah, Spanish. It's a Spanish last name. But it's just like, I'm not going to be mad at you if you call me a white guy. It's really not that big of a deal. So it's just... This season of Spy Family, circling back around to the actual show, and I apologize for the rant, but still, it's all relevant and related to this situation, is this season of Spy Family has hit a lot of big hot button topics that are going on in the real world right now that warrant talking about. And at the end of the day, without going on for like another hour and however long we could talk about this, people need to take it down like 18 notches. That's how far we've gone. You know what I mean? You guys remember the episode of South Park, you might know, when James Cameron went and had to raise the bar from like the Mariana Trench? We need him to go into the stratosphere and lower the madness of social media madness down from like the stratosphere back to a normal level. You know what I mean? He needs to bring that bar back down to earth. And people need to just chill out. You know what I mean? That's what needs to happen. Seriously. So, but either way, as for this, we saw like just everything that came about this, and Yor just wants to be relied on more, even if she's burning his shirt with an iron.
Yeah, no, like I was getting around to saying with Lloyd, like Lloyd is more or less like textbook perfect husband. Like he doesn't necessarily fit the whole, like ridiculous freaking dating criteria, but like when you actually get to married life shenanigans, he's more or less textbook perfect husband. Meanwhile, Yor is a damn travesty of a housewife. Like, she effectively cannot do anything housewife related.
But to that doesn't mean she's a terrible person. She has intent matters. She's not messing it up on purpose. It just happens. Some people are just bad at certain things. Like, well, how could you be bad at housework? It happens, man. It's just an inexplicable thing about being human and alive. You can't explain it. It just happens. You know what I mean? So it's just intent is the thing that matters the most. If she was actively sabotaging it and being a poor cook on purpose, she is legitimately trying to get better in every aspect. And as Anya points out in this episode, oh my god, Mama's cooking is actually kind of okay today. You know what I mean? So she is improving. So it's one of those things where intent matters, and Yor is still a good person, even as an assassin, obviously. But we all know why she's an assassin. She didn't just up and choose, I want to murder people. So it just happens to be her skill set. So either way, on the whole, for this season, the Lloyd backstory stuff was great and much needed for his character, and now we have more of his, obviously, the full perspective of his motivation as to why he's doing stuff we talked about earlier. The Anya stuff is still going on. We talked about what the author was doing with that and how it's come about and that kind of thing. So the friendship scheme is just probably going to be the gag, 1 in 10 chance that actually works out as how Lloyd gets to Desmond kind of thing. It's an all for one scheme where it's if this one works out, great. You know what I mean? The worst thing that could happen is obviously Anya getting too many Tenitris bolts from Lady Tenitris Bolt and getting kicked out of Eden College. But it's kind of one of the lowest risk thing. You know what I mean? With this operation. Yeah. So,
I mean, in general, they are taking kind of the shotgun approach with Strix, in that they're just basically throwing a whole bunch of things at the wall and seeing which sticks. There's the Anya befriending Damien. There's Anya becoming an Imperial Scholar and therefore getting the meeting with Desmond. There's the Melinda play. There's the getting to Desmond through the other teachers, with why Lloyd's going out of his way to try to become the doctor for as many of the teachers as he can.
Right.
and ingratiate them to him.
Right. So this season had a lot going on for the storyline, and I think a lot of people might have missed that with like all the stuff. The Melinda thing is, to me, the most interesting thing because of just her character. What the hell is going on with her? You know what I mean? That's a big curiosity. Obviously, she's got like the whole like pseudo bipolar situation going on. At a certain point, we're gonna have to get something more on the Desmonds, even if it's just for the viewer and or the reader, that the rest of the characters like Lloyd and the rest of them don't know. That's just for us to explain some stuff. You know what I mean?
I'm still convinced that Donovan has some form of mental powers similar to Anya, and that Melinda's figured it out, and that's why she's so scared of him.
Right? Because
like it puts a lot of context into things. Like for one, once again, he has the scars on his head, but also like a lot of Melinda's actions would make more sense if that was the case. Like her suddenly flipping and freaking out over the whole like Damien thing of like, if you put it into the context of her potentially realizing, oh, Damien's thinking about such and such, and if like she knows that, for example, that Donovan can read minds, just Damien even thinking about this will get me into trouble now, so I have to be super guarded around him and stuff like that.
Right. Because one of the big backdrops to this entire series is the science experiments that happened with Anya, that happened with Bond, that have happened with other children. You know, Project Apple, all those kinds of things that like work together that we talked about. You know, like Project Apple, the Garden of Eden. You know, Garden itself, all tying together. You know, Garden of Eden, Eden College, the Garden. You know, Project Apple, all those kinds of things. So all the stuff that the intrigue that's going on in the background of that, I'm sure that will come to the forefront at some point, because it'd be weird if it didn't. You know what I mean? We had that like side mission with Bond that you kind of can look at as like a throwaway thing, but it's just like, no, they're still doing it. They're still working, you know, having the experiments with the animals, stuff like that. We had the like that trained dog from that one terrorist, you know, that kind of thing. They got that dog from that same program. You know what I mean? As offhanded of a thing that was, it's like that's why that dog was so smart, because it was part of that program and they just happened to derp into it. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the background of this series that will be interesting to see when it comes to the forefront. But obviously, the major things are what's going on with Donovan, and then maybe we'll get more of like the brother as well at some point. But that whole family situation is definitely interesting. And then moving forward, another big question mark surrounding one of the major characters in Yor is, are we going to get more on Garden and like their just stance on anything? Because every organization has a stance. You know, they could be in that like gray area, but obviously they're Estonian, so we'll just have to see what their deal is.
Yeah, I do know that Demetrius, Damien's older brother, does make an appearance at some point in like the next story arc. So, like, presumably sometime like early to mid next season that he shows up. But I do know that we have seen him in the source material by this point, and there was a bunch of people talking about him finally making his first appearance.
Got it. So yeah, I mean, for everything that's going on here, we'll just have to see what how things come about. But the last thing that does warrant mentioning is Handler actually cares about her people, legitimately. Yeah. And she's a little vain because she just wanted to dress up as a nurse. So that was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, we have kind of seen bits and pieces of that occasionally. Like her whole, like, she has a bit of a complex about the fact that she's like in her 40s now. And so in her mind, she's getting old and therefore can't do all the things that she used to do.
Right.
So like her being a bit vain about trying to look attractive or see she could possibly pull off an outfit and stuff like that makes sense.
Right. And speaking of random intrigue, what another fairly throwaway line, she does mention at some point that she had a daughter.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's another thing for that character and just in general. But yeah. And in case anybody forgot, Fiona, everybody knows that you love Lloyd. Okay? This is not a secret. Everybody knows. Except for Yor, obviously.
The only people
but Yor
outside of
suspects
Wise,
it. So, you know.
the only people inside of Wise that's not aware, the only person inside of Wise that's not aware of her obsession over Lloyd is Lloyd.
Yeah.
and even he's kind of indicated that he kind of suspects that there's something going on there, but he just does not know the full extent of it.
Right. So, is it really a secret? So, either way, the series has a lot going for it. You know, nothing really too much to complain about. Like I said, a lot of people that complain about there's not enough spy stuff. We got a lot of spy stuff at the end of this season. Especially some of the lesser stuff, like I pointed out in the live reaction with, like, he has a skin patch, right? Boom, called it. You know what I mean? If that's not spy enough for you, if you know, the guy putting the mustache and the fake goatee is not spy enough for you, I don't know what you want. Man, you know what I mean? At a certain point, we just, that's another thing that needs to happen, is people need to stop being concerned with everything being quote-unquote goated, or, like, if it's not the best thing ever, then it's trash. It's like, no, sometimes it's just a good sandwich, and I will say this forever. I've talked about this plenty of times on the channel before. You know, take a series like, I don't know. Well, it's a series that we recently watched that was just a solid, like, Campfire Cooking. Is it the greatest show of all time? Absolutely not. But it is just a very good show. You know what I mean? It does exactly what it needs across the board. There are certain shows, like, even like that. Maybe that's not a great example, because that is a very well put together show across the board. But it shows like, I don't know. Imagine what the Suicide Squad anime could have been, Isekai could have been, if they had just run with the final episode. That kind of thing. You know what I mean? That's something we're going to talk about. Like Eminence in Shadow. That is a. It's not a great show, but it's fun and watchable for what it is. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. Stuff like One Punch Man. I
personally don't like Sid.
Yeah, even if we don't personally like Sid. Stuff like One Punch Man, obviously. But we and this is something that I'll mention it here too, is like I saw that, like, one of the greatest burns ever is like the most recent episode of Jujutsu Kaisen where Maki deals with the Zenin clan, and like the West has it rated as like one of the greatest episodes, like, period, of all time, like at a 9.8, and Japan has it at like a 5.7. And people are like, oh, Japanese people have no taste or whatever. It's just like, no, they're objectively assessing the episode based on the episode, not just the fight sequences that you watched on TikTok. You watched the 3 minutes of fight sequence and not the rest of the episode, right? And that's 100% factually, objectively correct. You cannot give an episode a 9.8 based on 3 minutes out of 23. That's insane. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't become a Hall of Famer in baseball because, oh man, you got signed by the Dodgers in September and had like an insanely amazing postseason for like 3 weeks, you know what I mean, and won the World Series with the Dodgers, and you were the MVP of everything, and then, like, that was all you did in your career. You're not a Hall of Famer because of that. You just had a massive flash in the pan that was really cool for 3 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, by that whole logic, freaking, like, one of the best animes of all time would be freaking Fate Unlimited Blade Works.
Right.
Like, that whole season, like, that, the amount of freaking spectacle fights that was in that season was absolutely freaking ridiculous. It looked really cool, but it's still just Fate's story.
Right.
Which is like a 6, maybe 7 out of 10.
Right. And this is something we've talked about before too, is solo leveling. Very cool, not a good show. Very mediocre across the board. You know what I mean? The peak of that show is the cool action sequences. That's what makes it fun to watch. The rest of it, very mediocre. You know what I mean? But that's what Westerners especially gravitate toward to now, is the aura farming and the shit that happens in like 3-minute sequences, because most people can't remember what happened 3 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So that doesn't make a good show. Sorry. That's what it is. It can be fun, you can enjoy it, but stuff like that is not a good show. It's like the difference between Solo Leveling and Frieren. One of these things is not like the other. I'll tell you guys which one won Anime of the Year, and it was the wrong one. So, frames, also to that end, the amount of frames in an episode does not mean it's a better show. I don't care if you're moving around like South Park, 1 frame at a time. Frames do not make a show better. It just means you have more frames. You know what I mean? So, before we end up going on for like 18 hours here on Madness, Spy Family Season 3, it did everything I think it needed to do. It was not like the atypical like downturn Season 3. It was Spy Family has just been a solid show across the board the first 3 seasons here. This season did everything that it needed to. We got more spy stuff in. We got the Lloyd backstory, which was necessary. We progressed the mission a little bit. More importantly, we pushed Lloyd more toward being the actual husband and father kind of situation, which is the thing that we talked about before, which he needs to have those connections and be able to reestablish those connections as a person and have something more to fight for beyond just, taking care of Desmond and then walking away. So
yeah, no, the ultimate end goal of the series, in my opinion, as it stands right now, is basically just going to be that Lloyd needs to get to a point where he's actually emotionally invested in, like truly emotionally invested in maintaining his relationship with Anya and Yor. And then at that point, figuring out the whole secrets of Anya and Yor with their friggin', being an assassin and the clairvoyant and stuff like that.
Full on Mr. and Mrs. Smith situation. The secrets need to come out for everybody.
Yeah, once the secrets start coming out, then it turning into a thing of they're the literal spy family of they all work together, they all have their own shticks, they all have their own abilities and gimmicks, and they all work together on their own missions.
Right. So, either way, another solid season for what it was, obviously. It did, I think, everything that it needed to. There were a couple things here and there that, yeah, but, that's every series. It's really, we don't nitpick that hard. It's not really that big of a deal for us. So, if it warrants mentioning, we do talk about it, and we have talked about stuff like that before. But, it's... See our series on Guild Receptionist. or the previous season of Overlord, that kind of thing. Or Tokyo Revengers, that kind of.
Yeah, that's Overlord is just another example of like the show isn't bad. Like the last season was particularly rough, but like the show itself is pretty good. I personally hate it though because I know the source material and I know that it should be so much better than it actually is.
Right. And this is something we'll talk about in our year in review stuff, like where we're talking about like what's next, that kind of thing. We'll go into that a little bit more, so we have more to talk about. And this was supposed to be about Spy Family. We kind of diverted, and again, I apologize for that. But it's all stuff that's adjacent and related, so that's why it just kind of came up naturally for the discussion. So either way, I enjoyed this season. We'll have Victoria roll the stills of the season, as is tradition, and we'll be back with Spy Family probably. Again, that was something we did look up between the reaction and the discussion here was this took place over the course of volumes 10 through 13, and 17 is almost done, so they have enough source material for like one more one core at the moment. So yeah, they'll probably do that, and then we'll probably be in waiting town a little bit, maybe closer to like maybe end of next year is when season 4 will come out, and then depending on how much the author does, then we might have to wait till like 2030, something like that, to potentially wrap up the series. I don't know how far we are into the actual story. You know what I mean? How long this is going to be? Obviously, if the author's on 17, I don't know how much they've done in the last 3 volumes, obviously, but I do know that the divorce arc is part of that. The massive air quotes, obviously, that's probably going to be the thing that Age mentioned with like the secrets coming out, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So
yeah, we have to get to the point where the secrets coming out isn't going to be the thing that drives the family apart, kind of thing.
Yep.
But eventually they will have to come out, because I would say they will have to come out as just saying, like, my current vision of the overarching story is that they will come out because ultimately I think the end goal is going to be all three of them actively having to work together to complete Strix.
Yep.
But in order to do that, they need to actually know about each other.
Right. So either way, at the end of the day, again, just to reiterate the stuff that I mentioned before, I like this show. Lloyd is one of my favorite characters, and I objectively think it is a very good show across the board. You know, Wit usually does a very good job with anything they work on as the primary. You know what I mean? They do a lot of good stuff, and just like any studio that's given enough time, it's going to be fine. So just got to give them time.
Yeah, as final note on the volumes thing, the author has been going pretty fast on this. Not like Gotchi Akuda levels fast, but still pretty fast. Like, they started the original source material for this in 2020, and they're up to 17 volumes now, which is quite fast. It's just, once again, it's not Gotchi Akuda levels fast. Gotchi Akuda is freaking on chapter like 250 now in only like 3 years.
Yeah, she's a machine. She deserves her own Sports Center commercial with Albert Pujols. There's a reference for you. But yeah. Anyway, that's all I got for this. We gone on pretty long here, so we got to wrap it up before we could go on. But I'll save it for our year-end episode. So, you got anything else, Id? Besides that, Crunchyroll and Discord now suck at the same time. I mean, what? And now I have a Streamlabs gripe. I just.
You're getting all of yours grapes for her.
Yeah, I'm getting all of yours gripes for her. Freaking software.
But yeah, no, I imagine that we'll probably get next season as a one core pretty quickly, and then there might be a little bit of a gap.
Maybe get like a movie or something.
Yeah, they might do a movie again. It just depends more on what like the actual source material is, and it could be condensed into a movie. But it probably wouldn't be too big of a gap between next season and the season after that, at the rate like the author seems to be going.
Yep. So anyway, again, people, as always, we appreciate you stopping by and hanging out with us in the dojo from our anime night in the dojo. And this was Spy Family, season 3, episode 13. And we'll be starting stuff up new in a couple days here, as per when this comes out. We'll be starting our new set of shows. All the dubs have started, except for Frieren. But I will say, Frieren is apparently only 10 episodes. So if the dub comes out 2 weeks later, we'd still be able to line it up with like episode 3 of everything else, and it wouldn't matter. So we're probably just going to do that. And if we only end up with 3 shows this season because of that, so be it. We'll do something else. For like every once in a while, we'll throw in a 4th video of the week with like, you know, something like Hitman. I know the next elusive target's coming. That's something that if Madhouse is around, we'll do that with Madhouse. If not, I'll just do it by myself with Aid. That kind of thing. That's something I want to do. Hitman stuff, because I love me some 47. There's another series that is just not like the greatest game of all time, but man, is it fun.
Yeah, we've been talking about wanting to do some actual like more gaming content on the channel for a while now. We just haven't really found exactly what we want to commit to doing it on.
Right. And this year I was just like, 2026 is about getting shit done. And we've already like, you know, we watched a bunch of stuff that we talked about that we'll talk about in the year in review, stuff like that kind of thing. And we're already making pretty good progress for the first month. So I'm looking forward to the rest of this year and what we're going to be doing. Potentially things like Hitman, obviously a couple more gaming things. I do want to have like just like some like gaming like discussions of us just talking about like what's happened, you know, like High Guard. You guys see the High Guard drama? Holy crap. That, I mean, I don't like to talk about drama, but just to talk about it in just the general sense, you know what I mean? So just that kind of thing. We'll be coming for you guys, and we'll have more on it on our intro to the channel, intro to the new year thing, because once again, for those of you who don't know, this is my second channel now because of all the madness that happened last year, and we'll cover that again. So we got that coming. So again, ladies and gentlemen, as always, we appreciate you stopping by and spending time with us, and look forward to more stuff this year. But again, we got the bare minimum, the 3 new shows coming. We're going to be finishing up Fire Force season 3. We got MF Ghost season 3 that's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to that one, especially because me being the car guy that I am. And then we also have, why can I not remember the third show every time? It's Fire Force, Frieren if the dub shows up. Oh yeah, Jujutsu Kaisen will also be coming, and hopefully they've, had enough time to fully animate everything, unlike last time. So,
from what I've heard, at least the fight scene of the first episode, at least, is apparently like movie quality. So, like they, at least for the start of this season, seem to have actually had the time and budget to actually put into things this time around.
Right. So either way, we got Fire Force, Frieren if the dub shows up in the next couple weeks. If it doesn't, then we'll just push it back a season. Because that's only 10 episodes, so we'll give it like the 2 weeks. If it doesn't show up by the third episode of what we're doing, then we'll just live without it or something. But Fire Force dub's there, Jujutsu Kaisen dub is there, and MF Ghost is there. So that's what's going to be coming in the next couple days here for you guys. So look forward to that. And then anything else that we're doing, we'll keep people updated. So again, we appreciate everybody. Have a good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it is for you guys. And see you next time.
Hey everyone, Victoria here. If you enjoyed the video, please consider pushing those like and subscribe buttons. Your support is greatly appreciated. Thanks again for your time, and we hope to see you again in the future.